Is this thing on there? Look like REC. It wasn't on before. Alright, well, hello and surprise. I know. Sorry, I'm a little nervous here. Get my pipe puff in here a bit. Anyway, I know Joey usually handles the show, but he's off having a meeting with someone who's an expert on historical education, an expert in bringing history alive. Well, I have to ask you, who's more of an expert in bringing history alive than a man who lived 300 years ago and sailed with the likes of Black Sam, Bellamy and Stede Bonnet, Charles Vane, and of course, Edward Blackbeard Teach. So are you ready to learn how to bring history alive? Well, let's get going and try it out, eh? Hey mate, so that was a snazzy opening there for the show. I guess they call that opening titles. Anyway, we're going to get started because I have quite a bit I want to share with you. So I've been very lucky. I lived 300 years ago. I was born at the end of the 1600s in Balquador, Scotland. My name is Angus MacGregor. I go by the nickname Quill, but also in my adventures, I went by the last name of McKinnon, which was my ma's tribe, as well as McBlackheart when I was really out on the account as a young man selling with Blackbird and whatnot. But this isn't about my story. Hopefully I'll be able to tell you that another time. I also have a series of books coming out and maybe some audio tales, so keep looking for that in the future. So anyway, let's go here. Get a good puff on my pipe here. There we go. That's nice. Keeps me calm because I'm a little nervous with all this mermaid technology. Well, I've been lucky enough to have my story told and to tell my story already in a lot of different places. It all started at a place called Port City Tour Company in beautiful Beaufort, North Carolina. I toured there a show that I created with a little bit of Joey's help, of course, and it was called Blackbird and the Pirates of Carolina. It was a wonderful tour around the town telling all the tales. I pretended to be all the different pirates in my story because after all, pirates are great storytellers, as I'm going to share with you in these videos here. And so anyway, I went on from there. I performed for museums, for festivals, for cruise ships from across the pond there in England come over to see the show and see what it's all about. And we was even on a television show, Passage of Dreams, that was in Tokyo, sponsored by Tokyo Disney. It was seen by people all over Japan a couple of years ago. That was great. But let's talk about really here about bringing history alive, shall we? Alright, so the first thing is that history gets very boring in a hurry when you're only talking about dates and places. Teachers out there, others who deal in historic education, that is a problem. It's about the people, like any kind of story, the characters, as it were, their flaws, their motivations, what made them tick, where they were from, what they were upset about, who they were in love with, what they treasured most, what they went after. And I'll tell you something right up front. It wasn't that pirates were all just about booty, about treasure, about blowing holes in the sides of ships with cannonballs. No. It was much more complicated than that, and I'm going to be getting into that as we go. But we were actually revolutionaries. We were like a rehearsal for the American and French revolutions that came later on during history at that time. So anyway, those are all the different kinds of things I did. I was in some magazines and all of that kind of stuff. Make it about the people. That's what was interesting. I'll tell you, find out about them. Well, how do you do that? Well, you have to do your research. You have to read books. You have to talk to people who know about what happened there. You have to go visit the places where these things happen. I was so lucky to go back 300 years later to Ocracoke, where Blackbeard was assassinated by the Royal Navy in a conspiracy with the governor of Virginia. Trust me on that, and it's in my books and my other bits, so you can know that it's fact. And anyway, in Beaufort, where I lived 300 years ago, where Blackbeard and I landed after we grounded, well, after he did, I was just a mate, I did what I was told, but after he grounded the Queen Anne's Revenge, which is still sunk out there in what's called Beaufort Inlet. It was Topsail Inlet at the time. So as we were going along there, it was wonderful to go back. If you can visit the places that the pirates were in, wherever they were, down in the Caribbean, there's some beautiful places in St. Croix and Nassau, the Bahamas, all kinds of places. What used to be Hispaniola, it's beautiful. You should go there, see the old forts, the old ruins, see a bit of the history, yeah. Also, too, the London docks, where they built the ships, where they hung the pirates, where Charles Vane, as a young man who was dying because he was going up and cleaning chimneys and he saw all his mates dying, went on the account because it was a better life for him. So do your research. Find the nuggets. Find those things in history that are really interesting to people, and there's lots of them. I mentioned that we were part of a revolution that was called the Jacobite Revolution. Now, as I was coming up as a young man, there was a big change. You see, the House of Stuart had been on the throne in England for a long time. In Scotland was James, King James I. A lot of people know about him, and then down through the line. Well, there was a bit of a dust-up, I guess you could say, between the Protestants and the Catholics, and the Protestants didn't want Catholics on the throne, and the Catholics were allied with the French and the Spanish, who were very Catholic, of course, at least in name, praying to God in the name of war and getting their riches and all those bits. And anyway, so Queen Anne wound up on the throne. Now, Queen Anne was from the House of Stuart. She was a sister of James III, who should have been on the throne, but wasn't. She was married to a guy, there was William of Orange, right? We don't like really to talk about him at all. But then when she died, they did a dastardly thing. They went and got a cousin who was Protestant, Church of England and all that, and they found a potato farmer in Germany, a cousin of some kind, named George. Now, here's the thing that a lot of people don't know. George, my friends, didn't speak a word of English, and yet he's king of England. Right? How would that be? Think about it. Not very good. So we went on the count trying to get James put on the throne. We failed. We tried to get his son on the throne. We failed. But we did make a lot of changes. We rehearsed for the revolution. We signed articles. It was a democracy. A captain could be voted out, at least in the early days. When I got out in 1724, all my mates were dead. Bellamy was dead, and Stede Bonnet was dead. Blackbeard was dead. Charles Vane was dead. Jack Rackham was dead. And the men who was coming up, Edward Lowe and the like, they'd slit your throat if they wanted to be captain of your ship. But it wasn't always like that, I tell you. Now, another thing that I would really like to tell you as you're going about in your research is really to find the history of the individual people. If you decide to go out and do live in history, whether you do Chautauqua or you do some other kind of tours, or you're a guide of some kind in a tourist area, or you're performing in a play that's a period play, whatever it might be, you need to find what makes these people tick, what makes them go like a clock on and on and on a timepiece. Yeah. So the kind of things that you're going to be looking for is, what was their childhood like? Now, I tell you, all the pirates, including myself, that I came up with, almost without any change or deviation, were orphans, you see. Ma and Da weren't there. They were raised up by other people, or their situation got bad and their parents died because of that situation, or they were uprooted in some way from their home because they were kicked off their land, or some kind of circumstance politically changed as the Allies changed, as the wars changed. As you do your research, especially if you're doing pirating research about the golden age of piracy, what you're gonna find out is that all the crowned heads of Europe, France, in Spain, the Dutch, English, of course, Scotland, all the different big kingdoms that were in control of things, they were all related. All these families liked to keep it all between them, you see. And that was a real problem because they'd get angry at themselves and at each other, as families do, and they'd start warring. And he would bring in 10,000 of men to die, and it would make it terrible for children, and it would make it terrible for women, and it was not a good situation for everyone. Now, a big part of the time where I come up was also the slave trade. Sure, that was the African company there, the Royal African Company, led by men who went to Africa and got the slaves, brought them back to work the sugar plantations down in the Caribbean. As you probably know, this situation lasted for hundreds of years. It was no good at all. Well, the pirates that I sailed with, some of them in the past, they were slave overseers, or they owned plantations, or their families did. They were involved with slaves. But Sam Bellamy, who grew up as a farmer, who was kicked off his land in Devonshire and wound up in the city trying to feed his family and wound up going on the account. Well, Sam believed truly in the equality of all men. And he said to his men, he would say this: "We are princes of the world, men, and we have as much right to make war upon the world who would take away our rights as any king with 200,000 men in the field and 200 ships in the sea." Now, my friend Sam, he died in a terrible hurricane, getting back to his love after he had sailed, made his fortune, and made his point. And I'm going to be introducing you to Sam one way or another in the future, hopefully through some videos, because he's a very dynamic personality. Now, doing your research, what do we know about Blackbeard? What we know about Blackbeard is that he served in the Royal Navy before he became a pirate. And before pirate, he became a privateer. Legal pirate, basically, because as all these families are waging their wars, think about Europe and the map of Europe. It's a lot of water, so there's a lot of battles on the sea. It's very expensive. It takes a lot of coin to wage war on the sea. And so, of course, they would bring in men. Now, who better to sail on the sea when you can't fill your navy with pure recruits? You get what are called privateers. You have them sign a letter of marque. They get to keep some of what they have. They give you, meaning you, the king, all the other richy riches that like to make war, because war is very, very good for nobles. They get very sad when they're not having it and the profits drop. That should still sound familiar to modern audiences, I would think. Anyway, here, so you go out on the account, legal as a privateer, you shoot up other ships, you help your country, and then what happens? After they sign a treaty, like in 1713, Treaty of Utrecht, that ended the War of Succession, or Queen Anne's War, where I came up as a young pup and met all these different characters, all these different pirates I've been mentioning. Then they say, oh well, pirating's illegal, go back to your poor poverty life and have a good time with that. And so that's really where the story starts, where I choose to tell it. Anyway, after I left my home, left Roy MacGregor, if you ever heard of him, the famous Rob Roy, that was my uncle. After my parents were killed by William of Orange, who I care not to talk about, or at least by his agents after he rose to the throne, because to the throne rather. Don't know what a phone is. I think it's some of that mermaid technology. Yes. Anyway, as he rose to the throne illegally, my parents didn't want to profess fealty to a man who didn't belong there, that went against their faith, that went against their history, their clans, and so they were murdered for it, you see. So, the last thing that I want to tell you in this segment here, because Joey's going to be getting home at some point and see that I'm using all his bits here to talk about these things, is that your garb tells a story. So, I'm going to come a little closer to the camera here so you can see some things. Now, One of the things I want to show you here is I have 4 hoops in my ear right here. That means I sailed around the world 4 times. Now, it also means too that it's helpful to me. It's why I wear them. It's a silver and gold mix. Definitely helps with the eyesight. Now, a quick story here talking about eyesight. You know, a lot of pirates wear patches over their eye. Do you know where that is? Well, down in the hull of a ship where a pirate will spend a lot of time, or any sailing man really, it's dark, right? No windows because it's below the waterline. So do the math, so to speak. Anyhow, you put a patch over your eye there. This eye will get used to the dark. When you go down below decks, you move the patch over. Yeah, this eye is already acclimated to the dark. This one will be soon. You take off the patch and you can go about your work without smacking your head on the bulkhead or having some other bad things happen, being surprised by a stowaway, any kind of strange thing like that. What else can I tell you here? All these feathers here were given to me. Those are my quills that I tell my story with here. You'll notice that I wear a skull and crossbones. It's quite popular. I got a skull here, and I also got a skull on my wrist here. Well, lots of them. That reminds us that life for a pirate is short. Average life for a pirate was, 25 years of age. Not a lot of married men went out on the count. Pirating became part of the Brotherhood of the Seas because there just wasn't a longevity in it. But it was terrible in the Navy. It was terrible as a merchantman, and you couldn't make the money, and you were serving the interests of the nobles and the kings, which weren't aligned with the common man at all. I'm sure in modern times you have no idea what I'm talking about as far as that goes. But anyway, so you wanted to be aligned with people who were like you. But the likelihood of death was high. The fact that I lived to the ripe old age, well, I'm not going to tell you, but it was good. Let me just tell you, I saw the early days of the American Revolution. I'll just tell you that much. So anyway, I was a rare creature. Like I said, all my best friends were dead by the time, they were 35. Some of them were in their 20s. It was a bad scene. What else do I want to show you here? Well, there are things sometimes that just mean something to you. I wear this here from my back home. This is a ring, a dragon ring that goes all the way back to the clans of the Mist, the MacGregors, and also the McKinnons, Mama's clan. The dragon is very big there. I do wear my tartan plaid that has to do with my various clans there. And I do have, I don't know, here it went down here. But this here I got from a traveler, Spanish. This cross here for my Catholic faith. Which I've never really let go of here. And I got this under circumstances. I thought this man was my friend, and he took me for a lot of money by pretending to give me opportunities that he thought I really wanted. It was a valuable lesson. I learned a flaw I had there, that I had a price. That not everything I did was in the name of my killed parents or for the clans of Scotland who were being suppressed. Some of them couldn't even use their own name, like the MacGregors had to go by the name of Campbell because they upset the British government, and all other kinds of things going on. So I wear this to remember, to recall that even I have a price. And then here, I'm going to try to stand up here. I'll show you here. I wear this red sasha, Diego del Fuego, another Spaniard, gave me this after a big duel between some of our pirating crews and the Spanish. We always seemed to be at war with them. His captain was a man named Amaro Macato. Interesting man that I talk about a lot in my stories. So that's all the time that I have for right now. And I guess I'm supposed to come back after a little break or a little split or something. I'm still getting to learn this and tell you about all the things you can do to interact with the channel and like it and all that business. So we're going to do that soon. That's all I have for you on this episode. Hopefully there'll be some more in the future. So I want to let you know, if you like this, it's I'm not real familiar with it, but it's a thumbs up. So you want to click on that. That's nice and friendly, matey and piratey. Also too, you want to subscribe. That's sort of like joining a crew. and sign in the articles, and it'll work out to your benefit. Trust me, it always does when you join a pirate crew. And then also, you're going to want to hit the bell. Now, I love that. Every ship has a bell. That's how they identified the wreck of Sam Bellamy's Wida slave ship there that was converted into a pirate ship. Always going very well. So go ahead and subscribe. I know you're going to like it, and I know that you're going to think it's great. Angus, what are you doing? I go out for a couple of hours and you take over my studio? I mean, you take over my show? Well, mate, what you did is you went off with a gold in the hull, all the sails set. What's a pirate to do except take over your ship, per se? Well, look, it's been kind of a long day. I still have a lot to do. The meeting went great, went longer than I thought it was going to go. So please just finish up in here so I can get back in here and do my work. And please just leave everything where you found it, okay? Just do that for me, okay? All right. Well, you heard my new mateys, so I guess I best be getting out of here. So we'll hope to see you next time. I don't know, maybe I'll sneak back in. He doesn't leave the house that much, to tell you the truth, but you never know where I might turn up. So until then, put on your pirating garb and go out and bring history alive. Later, and remember, every day truly is a pirate story all its own.